Revenge with Karen.
"I need your badge, Judith, and your dignity if there's any left." That's what he said. Right there in the glassbox conference room, in front of the whole damn strategy team, while someone was still nibbling a blueberry scone. My name wasn't even on the calendar invite. Ryan Kessler, new director, fresh from whatever MBA clown college minted him, called it a realignment sink. Translation: public flogging. "You're just admin," he smirked, dragging out the last syllable like it was a racial slur. "We're moving into a more agile era. No offense, but your role is a relic." The room went silent, except for the AC wheezing overhead like it, too, was sick of his voice. No one looked at me. Not Jenna from Ops, not Vic from Finance, not even Marla, who once drunkenly called me her work mom. Just a synchronized shuffle of papers, guilty gulps of lukewarm coffee, the overwhelming stench of cowardice in cheap cologne. I didn't cry. Hell, I didn't even blink. I stood up, adjusted the hem of my blazer, navy, crisp, dry cleaned the night before because I still gave a damn, and slid my Atrilo Systems badge across the table. That's all I gave him. Not a word, not a reaction. Just a little tap of plastic on Formica. But here's what I didn't do. I didn't delete a single thing, not the folder structures, not the access keys, not the encryption trail tied to the $250 million merger with Rixton Tech. Because I wasn't just admin. I was the damn glue. I built that house of folders, compliance, legal, vendor risk, brick by encrypted brick. You think the M and a fairies just organize audit trails overnight? Nah, sweetheart, that was me. And when Ryan fired me, he thought he was removing a paperclip. He unplugged the damn fuse box. Now, before we go any further, I just gotta say, if you're still listening and enjoying the ride so far, take a second to hit that like button and subscribe. It's free, it helps more than Ryan helped anyone, and it tells the team we're not just yelling into the void here. Seriously, 93% of y'all listen without subscribing, and unlike Ryan, you have potential. Anyway, back to this train wreck. As I packed up my things, planner, charger, mug that said it's fine, I'm fine, everything's fine, Ryan stood at the door like a mall cop with too much power, watching to make sure I didn't smuggle state secrets or a company stapler. Funny thing is, I was walking out with something priceless, time bombs. He didn't know that compliance custodianship required chain of custody credentials, or that legal had, 6 months ago, asked me to implement double key encryption on the final compliance binder, exact set of documents Rixton Tech's auditors would need to finalize the merger. And those keys, guess whose name they were under? I walked past reception like a ghost, took the elevator down alone, got in my Subaru, and sat in the parking lot for 10 whole minutes just breathing, not crying, not raging, just letting the silence settle. I pulled out my phone and refreshed my email. Still had access. I stared at the green light of my login session, still glowing like an open wound no one noticed. They hadn't even processed the termination paperwork yet. That night, I poured a whiskey, medium glass, 1 cube, and sat at my kitchen table staring at the blinking cursor on a blank Word doc. Title: Contingency Plan. By morning, my phone would have 7 missed calls. 4 from the CFO, 2 from legal, 1 from Ryan. "Too late, boys, the door you locked me out of." Turns out I held the only damn key. Next morning, while I sipped my coffee in a robe older than Ryan's resume, the men in suits sat in the West Conference Room, breathing filtered air and high-stakes anxiety. The Rixton Tech audit team had arrived, 3 men and a woman, all wearing that patented consultant deadpan, the kind that says we will quietly end your career before lunch and then expense a quinoa salad. $250 million. That's what was on the table. The only thing standing between Atrilo Systems and a payday, big enough to make our board weep into their blood-signed stock options, was a single folder. "All right," said Blake from legal, voice smooth but sweating. "As part of due diligence, we'll be walking through the final compliance binder, HR liabilities, vendor reconciliation, all SEC trail entries. Ryan, if you would." Ryan, bless his khakis, leaned forward like a golden retriever about to open a treat jar. "Of course," he clicked. The room leaned in. Nothing happened. He clicked again. And then there it was. A prompt. Cold, gray, unapologetic. Enter 48-digit access key for compliance final lock. Ryan blinked. The lead auditor tilted his head, like a man watching someone try to light a cigarette with a banana. "Must be a local error," Ryan said, chuckling with the confidence of someone who'd never been told no by his mom. "Just give me a second." He clicked around like a toddler on a broken iPad. The password screen didn't budge. "Try the temp key," said someone from finance. "I am," Ryan hissed under his breath. Across the table, the CFO, Marshall Wilkins, known affectionately as the Corpse, shifted in his chair for the first time all morning. His jaw flexed. That was it. Not a word, not a sigh. Just that little twitch of bone under skin, like a seismograph reading something faint but fatal. "I assume the key holder is on site?" the auditor asked, polite as a gun to the temple. Ryan glanced at Blake. Blake glanced at it. And IT, poor bastards, glanced down like guilty schoolchildren praying for the bell. "Well," Ryan started, tugging at his collar. "Technically the key holder was, Judith Harmon, our former admin." Word admin landed in that room like a dead cat on a wedding cake. "Former," the auditor repeated. "She was, offboarded yesterday." Dead silence. No one even coughed. "Who reassigned keyholder permissions?" No one answered. The auditor wrote something in his leather-bound notebook, deliberate, slow. Then he clicked his pen shut, closed the binder in front of him with a thunk, and folded his hands on top of it. "Let's take five. Five in this case. Shorthand for what the hell did you idiots just do?" Outside that room, panic bloomed like mold in the carpet. IT scrambled to run override protocols. Legal thumbed through internal chain of custody policy. HR pretended they didn't hear anything. And Ryan stood in the hallway, whisper screaming into his phone like a man trying to unflood a basement with a Dixie cup. Meanwhile, I was folding laundry, listening to classic rock, texted my sister a gif of a dumpster fire wearing a tie. And when my phone buzzed with a number ending in -7003, the CFO's direct line, I let it go to voicemail. Twice. He didn't leave a message. He knew better. You don't put out a fire by yelling at the ashes. At 11:12 a.m., I got the first email. Subject: Urgent System Access Escalation. Judith, hope you're well. Run into a minor access snag and would appreciate your quick assistance restoring access to a few compliance files needed for audit finalization. The message reeked of desperation under perfume. I read it twice, then closed it. Because if they thought the fire alarm was bad, wait till they see who wired the building. By 11:30, the panic inside Atrelos was metastasizing. Ryan was pacing like a raccoon on cocaine. CFO had slipped into his office and shut the door so quietly, the hinges might have cried. Legal was on their second emergency huddle. Meanwhile, the audit team, still seated, still silent, scribbling in their tiny little black notebooks like priests preparing for exorcism, and the folder, still locked tighter than a nun's liquor cabinet. IT had thrown everything at it: manual resets, admin rekeys, rollback credentials. Nothing. System kept flashing the same smug message: access denied. Custodian verification required. What they hadn't realized when I built the compliance vault was that the encryption wasn't just internal, it used a double-layered protocol. Timestamped logs stored off-site, linked to a digital custodianship registry. It had been legal's idea, actually. Too much liability to allow anyone and their brother to go poking around vendor indemnity clauses, one of the attorneys had told me last year. Let's chain it to one person. Guess who they chained it to? I was that one person. So while Atrelo's systems imploded one Slack message at a time, I was on my second cup of Black Rifle coffee, scrolling Zillow listings in Maine just to feel something. The cat, Mr. Pickles, was asleep on the windowsill, snoring like a tiny chainsaw. The phone buzzed once, then again, and again, and again. CFO missed call 4X, Marshall Wilkins voicemail, 0047 legal group email, urgent chain request, Ryan Kessler iMessage. Judith, can we please just talk for a second? Please, I clicked the voicemail. Marshall's voice was flatter than usual, but you could smell the stress through the speaker. Judith, listen, I realized there were, some decisions made hastily. We're just hoping you could help us move forward with resolving a few small access issues. If you could come in, happy to reclassify your status as consulting for compliance purposes. Just call me. There it was, the pivot, from firing to consulting. From you're just admin to please, queen of folders, save us. The next text was from Jenna in Ops, they're freaking out. IT said it could take days to break it without triggering SEC red flags. Did you really lock it that tight? I didn't reply, just turned on the kettle, tossed in a honey stick. Added a splash of bourbon, 'cause today deserved ceremony. Let's be clear here, I didn't want this chaos, but I planned for it. Because when you work somewhere long enough, you start to understand exactly what happens when the wrong man gets the right job. They cut too fast, smile too wide, and trip over things they don't understand, like custodial access, legal compliance, and the woman who ran it all without ever demanding a damn title upgrade. And now that woman was off the books. IT finally pinged legal. Judith Harmon still listed as custodian. No override unless chain resets, external verification required. Legal wrote back in record time, do not attempt force access. SEC Clause 6.4.1 prohibits internal override without original custodian's written consent. Translation, they weren't locked out. They were paralyzed. I got up from the table, wandered into the living room, turned on the TV, and muted it. Background noise only. I wanted the silence, the weight of it. Let it settle over me like a weighted blanket made of smug satisfaction. The phone buzzed again, a new number. Voicemail transcription read, Judith, it's Marshall. We'd really like to discuss terms. There it was. The shift. See, they thought they could fire me and keep my system. Keep my structure. Keep my encryption without ever respecting the person who built it. But systems are people, and people remember, especially the ones you condescend to in a room full of laptops and ego. I put down the phone, stood by the window, and watched the sun creep across the siding of my neighbor's garage. Somewhere downtown, Ryan Kessler was chewing the inside of his cheek so hard it probably bled. And I just sipped my tea, smiled, and whispered, now we're going to talk on my terms. When I finally picked up Marshall Wilkins' call, it was 12:42 p.m., and I was halfway through reorganizing my spice rack. That's how little pressure I was under. I had alphabetized from allspice to Zadder by the time his voice crackled through the line, nervous and overly warm, like a man trying to convince a bear he didn't mean to step on her cub. Judith, so glad we could connect, he began, stretching the greeting like taffy. Listen, there's been a bit of a snag, minor hiccup, really, with the audit folder permissions. Totally understandable given the timing. We'd love to have you come in, just to help smooth things over, purely procedural, of course. He tried to sell it like a friendly favor, like I might be free between yoga and mani-pedis to drop by and save their $250 million merger from face-planting into regulatory hell. I let a beat of silence hang there. Then another. Then, you'll need me on site. I'll need an amended agreement, a retroactive consulting classification, legal indemnity for any data I handle, and NDA coverage for anything I see post-termination. Also hazard pay. I could almost hear the sweat drip down his temples. Sure, I mean yes, of course, that all sounds fair. We'll have legal draw something up, would say 2 o'clock work? I'll see you at 3, perfect. Absolutely perfect. Thank you again, Judith. He hung up before his voice cracked. Within minutes, I had an email from legal with a contract attached. Subject: consulting addendum urgent. They didn't even bother to change the footer from the last guy they tried to beg back. I replied with track changes and added a clause of my own. Consultant affirms no responsibility for content added, removed, or modified within the system post-termination. Blake from legal called to confirm. Judith, he said, all business. We walk through your edit to Clause 7 real quick. No, I replied. Clause 7 is non-negotiable. I didn't touch a single byte since you cut me loose. That clause keeps it that way. Silence, then understood. I printed the agreement, signed it, and slid on my navy blazer, the one with the crisp lapels and hidden pockets, war armor for boardroom combat. Underneath, a soft blouse the color of storm clouds. Clean lines. No emotion. Uber driver didn't make small talk. He didn't have to. I think the hum of the city knew what was coming. I arrived at 2:57 p.m., 3 minutes early, just enough time to let them sweat while pretending not to. Reception's eyes widened when I stepped in, not because they missed me, but because they recognized me. Judith Harmon, fired yesterday, resurrected today, now walking like a lawyer in a hurricane. I signed in as consultant. Upstairs, glass conference room was too bright. LED lights, daylight spill. Truth had nowhere to hide. Marshall stood. Ryan did not. Judith, thank you for coming, Marshall said, gesturing to the seat beside him like we were old friends at a cookout instead of opponents in a Cold War. We've got the documents ready for re-verification, and the auditors are. I'll need a read-only terminal, hardwired, I interrupted. No Wi-Fi. No back-channel plugins. I'll need someone from legal present for every step. Ryan finally spoke. His voice was small, almost petulant. That seems a bit dramatic, doesn't it? I turned toward him, not blinking. Your merger's on hold because you deleted the wrong person. If you're worried about drama, maybe sit this one out. He looked away. Legal nodded, We'll get that terminal ready now. As they scrambled to accommodate, I sat in silence. Didn't check my phone. Didn't make small talk. Just watched the team scramble like kids trying to cover up a broken vase before Mom gets home. By 3:20, everything was in place. I logged in. My name, still active in the system registry. My encryption key, still marked as primary custodian. Ryan stared at the screen like it had personally insulted his manhood. Chain of custody was never reassigned, legal whispered to the CFO, as if saying it softly might make it less true. Can't touch a byte without her documented approval. I tapped once, unlocked the shell, paused, then looked up and said, "Let's begin." The paper felt warm in my hands, still fresh from legal's printer, like it hadn't yet realized what it was signing away. 48-hour consulting contract, full indemnity for prior and future folder access. Retroactive reinstatement as custodian of record. The language was clinical. The message was gospel. We need you more than we need our pride. I sat at the end of the glass table, blazer unbuttoned, legs crossed like I owned the floor beneath the Berber carpet, and in that moment I did. Across from me sat Marshall Wilkins, the CFO, reading my edits like they were a ransom note, because they were nicely formatted. Calibri 12, but still a ransom note. Clause 4. I would be granted consultant immunity. No liability for anything inside the system. No questions asked. Clause 5. I would operate as an independent agent, answerable only to legal during the review window. Clause 7. I had zero input or responsibility for any actions taken on the folders after my firing. Period. Blake from legal glanced at Ryan, then back at me. "This is a little aggressive," he said, voice like sandpaper in a wind tunnel. "Was fired without cause and escorted out without a thank you," I replied, folding the corner of the contract calmly. "This is the friendliest I'm going to be." Marshall cleared his throat, the universal sign of a man who realizes he's negotiating from a ditch. "These terms are acceptable," he said finally, as if chewing glass. I signed, in ink, then passed it back without eye contact. "Wonderful," Blake mumbled, making 3 copies for distribution. "Forward this to Rixton Tech's Council, so they know you're officially part of the merger continuity team." That last bit wasn't in the original plan. Continuity team. Funny how quickly titles mutate when panic meets desperation. Across the room, Ryan leaned against the wall, arms folded like a kid sent to timeout. The smirk was gone, replaced by something meaner, resentment clinging to what little dignity he had left. "Glad to have you back," he muttered. Pathetic olive branch, wilted and late. I didn't look at him, didn't even nod. My gaze stayed on the read-only terminal in front of me. Numbers, logs, access trails, audit signatures, all laid out like a forensic autopsy. I began parsing the entries with surgical focus. Every click, every user login, every timestamp. I was looking for one thing, fingerprints that didn't belong. Someone had accessed the shell 2 hours after I was fired. That someone wasn't on the registry. The atmosphere in the room had shifted. No more scrambling, no more emails flying, just silence thick enough to smother. Ryan coughed. Anything you're finding we should be aware of?" Still didn't look at him. But I did speak. "Not yet. But if there's something in here that shouldn't be, I'll find it." Marshall looked like he aged 5 years in one breath. "Just keep us looped in, Judith. The Rixton team's still waiting on green light. We've got until end of day tomorrow. Then I suggest everyone clears out. I work faster without background noise, and they did, one by one. Legal, IT, Marshall. Even Ryan slithered off after a final moment of sulking near the door. If he was trying to linger in case I slipped up, he forgot one thing. I don't slip. By 5:17 p.m., I had isolated 2 red flags in the access logs, both tied to Ryan's machine, both marked with the same digital watermark. Unauthorized credential override attempt flagged. I printed the page, slipped it into a manila folder, tucked it in my bag, then shut down the terminal like a priest closing the last rites book. If they thought I was here to be quiet and helpful, they hadn't read the fine print. I wasn't back. I was in control. The next morning, I arrived precisely at 8:29 a.m. Not a minute early, not a second late, just enough to remind them I was punctual, but not eager. The executive floor had that hushed tension only corporate shame can breed. You could hear keyboards breathing, phones trembling. And somewhere down the hall, I swear, a microwave beeped like it was afraid to make a sound. Rixton Tech's auditors had taken over the war room, and I was assigned a corner station with 2 monitors, a secure local terminal, a freshly laminated badge labeled Temp Consultant Level 7, Level 7. The irony almost made me smile. I logged in. Access restored. Keys re-authenticated. My name recrowned in the system as primary custodian of record. I clicked open the audit shell and watched the console unfold like an autopsy table. The logs began scrolling. Each timestamp was a heartbeat. Each access attempt a fingerprint. And that's when I saw it. 08/14/5:43 p.m. credential transfer request origin. Kessler at first glance, it looked like a basic system edit. But the devil, oh, he lives in metadata. The edit request came from Ryan's machine, routed through an admin shell not even legal had clearance for. It was marked flagged, unauthorized privilege escalation. He tried to reassign my custodianship after I was fired. And failed, because I'd built the thing to reject edits from inside the firewall. The access keys lived in a timestamped vault verified by external hash, a backdoor to keep backstabbers out. Ryan must have thought he could just rewrite the locks after tossing me out, but I'd anticipated that move months ago. I flagged the attempt, packaged the log, and submitted it through internal audit protocol with a quiet note, unauthorized credential escalation attempt by Kessler. Logged, flagged, routed for compliance review. Recommend immediate suspension of user profile until risk assessment complete. No drama, no commentary, just facts, cold, legal damning. Within 15 minutes, IT had locked Ryan's profile. His Slack froze. Email access suspended. A pale-faced admin walked by my desk carrying his corporate laptop like it had been dipped in nuclear waste. The war room went quiet when they saw the freeze notice. The lead auditor, silver-haired guy named Watts, glanced at me with a raised brow. Chain breach, he asked softly, not accusing, just verifying. I didn't answer. Instead, I reached into my folder, pulled out the printed access log, the one with Ryan's attempted override circled in red, and placed it on the table in front of him like a sacred offering. He read it, passed it to his colleague, then quietly clicked his pen and jotted something down in the corner of his notepad. Behind him, Marshall and Blake were whispering furiously, faces pale, necks stiff. They hadn't expected this. They thought bringing me in would be a cleanup, a mop and go. Instead, they were staring at a contamination site, a breach. One committed not by a hacker, not by a rogue intern, but by the golden boy they parachuted in to streamline the company. From across the room, Ryan stormed in, oblivious to the freeze. Why the hell is my laptop disabled? I've got to, Ryan. Marshall interrupted, voice calm but firm. We need to step into my office. Ryan opened his mouth, then spotted the printed log in Watt's hand. And he knew, didn't say a word, just turned and followed the CFO out of the room like a man being led to a guillotine dressed in Banana Republic. I sat back in my chair, not smug, not gloating, just still. The kind of still you get after a storm passes, and you realize you're the only one who brought an umbrella. Auditor Watts looked up once more. Anything else we should know, Miss Harmon? I turned to my screen, scrolled to the next batch of logs, and said, if there is, I'll find it. By midday, the war paint had turned to sweat. The Rixton tech team wasn't just auditing anymore, they were excavating. What started as routine folder validation had become an archaeological dig into the corporate rot Ryan had smeared over everything he touched. Every signature he'd approved, every checkbox he'd ticked in his mad dash to look competent, was now a crime scene under fluorescent lighting. It began with a vendor clause, line 72 on an indemnity rider buried inside a contract from a third-party data processor based in Nevada. Nothing flashy, no bold fonts, just a 6-line clause buried in boilerplate. Processor shall be indemnified only under direct signatory review of buyer liability counsel. Translation. Fatrilos didn't flag this. Rixton Tech would be absorbing potential exposure from an open claim involving a recent data breach. The kicker, that clause required written countersignature from Rixton Tech's legal rep, and it never happened. Ryan had signed it blindly, stamped it, uploaded it, shoved it in the cleared folder. And that folder? I had marked it with a red flag 2 weeks before he fired me. Even emailed him directly. Subject. Vendor 3, a clause red flag body. This line may void indemnity protections under the acquisition structure. Recommend immediate review with legal. He never replied. Worse, he deleted it. I know because I pulled the exchange logs, and like every lazy bastard in a hurry to climb the ladder, he forgot that email deletions in Outlook aren't really deletions. Not when you've got full archival access. Like I do. I printed it, walked over to the auditors who were already murmuring over the clause. Looking for context, I asked, sliding the email across the table. Watts read it, expression unreadable. When was this sent? 16 days ago, I replied, before I was removed, and his response, there wasn't one. Just this. I handed over the deletion log with the timestamp. The moment felt heavier than the others. No fireworks, just dread, like watching a crack travel across a damn wall in slow motion. Marshall, the CFO, took off his glasses and stared at nothing. You could practically see the math running through his skull: legal exposure, investor fallout, press damage, and worst of all, the look on the board's face when they realized he let Ryan off the leash. Blake from legal paled next. We need a recess, he said, turning to the audit team like a man requesting a cigarette break before execution. Watts nodded. 10 minutes. The room cleared fast, chairs scraping tile, papers shuffled like they might somehow cover the stench of negligence. Marshall didn't move, just sat there blinking, rubbing the bridge of his nose with both hands. This can't be real, he mumbled. This was supposed to be locked by now. This was supposed to be done. I said nothing. Just walked to the window and looked out over the skyline. Below, traffic moved on. Lives continued. Somewhere, Ryan was probably pacing in a hallway, still believing this could be salvaged with a few clever excuses. But that one clause, it would have torpedoed the merger on signing day, nullified the indemnity clause Rixton Tech required to protect their investors. One line buried deep in paperwork. The kind of thing just admin people catch, because we read. At 1:43 p.m., Blake came back in with 2 more attorneys and a shaken Marshall. Need to walk the auditors through a revised impact scope, he said quietly. And we'll be realigning responsibilities for the remainder of the audit. Realigning, I repeated, the word curling in my mouth like spoiled milk. Yes, Blake nodded. Effective immediately, you'll be designated Compliance Integration Officer on record, for all audit purposes. I didn't react, didn't smile, didn't thank him. Just looked him square in the eyes and said, then let's fix what you broke. They called the emergency meeting at 3:07 p.m. No agenda, no PowerPoints, no catered muffins or awkward jokes about synergy. Just a closed-door session in the boardroom where oxygen went to die. Ryan was already there, arms crossed, eyes darting like a cornered raccoon. His face was pale, but not from guilt. He hadn't evolved that far. It was the look of a man who realized too late that charisma can't decrypt credentials. Buzzwords don't override system logs. Marshall opened the meeting. We've reviewed the chain of custody report and the audit findings to date, he said, voice raw from stress and fear. Based on those findings, and to protect both the integrity of the merger and our regulatory position, he paused. Looked at Ryan. Couldn't hold the eye contact. Ryan Kessler is being placed on immediate administrative leave pending full compliance review. Ryan's chair creaked as he shifted, about to speak, but Blake from legal cut him off. You are to surrender all Atrilo Zone devices and credentials before COB today. We'll be escorting you to collect your belongings after this meeting. Ryan opened his mouth again, but Marshall raised a hand, not in anger, just exhaustion. The kind of silent gesture that says, please, don't make this worse. Ryan didn't speak after that. He just stared at the table, jaw clenched, as the last shreds of his career at Atrilo's shriveled up like a worm on asphalt. Marshall turned to me. In light of the situation, we've updated the merger documentation. Clause 14.1 now includes a continuity oversight provision, per the request of Rixton Tech's legal team. He slid a printed addendum across the table. A single page. Centered, black ink on white paper. No fluff, continuity oversight shall be managed by the original architect of record. No names, just title. But everyone in that room knew who it meant. They looked at me. I didn't say thank you, didn't smile, didn't ask about title bumps or compensation or parking validation. I just picked up the paper, scanned it, and nodded once. And then I went to work. Back in the war room, the auditors had resumed their grind. Watts gave me a nod as I returned to my terminal, this time seated at the head of the table. No protest, no ceremony, just a quiet realignment of power. The kind that doesn't come with applause but is unmistakable. I dug back into the logs, located 5 more vendor inconsistencies, forwarded corrections, flagged 1 clause for cross-checking with SEC filings. Each action logged, time-stamped, mirrored to legal in real time. At 5:32 p.m., Blake brought in a stack of folders for me to review. Marshall said to route all final review materials through you, he said, placing them gently beside me like I was a priest receiving confession. I nodded, didn't look up. Behind me, I could hear Ryan's voice echoing softly in the hallway, something about a misunderstanding and protocol not being clearly communicated. Security was with him. They walked him out through the service elevator. He didn't look back, because by then, even he knew, there was no coming back from this. Not when the system you tried to rewrite kept a better memory than you ever had. And not when the woman you called just admin wrote every damn line. The conference room smelled like too much cologne and barely contained panic. Again, only this time, it wasn't mine. It was merger day, the big dance, the $250 million finish line. Everyone was suited up like Wall Street prom kings, eyes straight, folders stacked, nerves prepped to shatter at the drop of a misplaced decimal. Except me. I walked in holding a black leather binder the size of a small tombstone, sealed, labeled, numbered pages, printed indexes, cross-referenced attachments. Even the damn staples had a rhythm to them. This wasn't just a document, it was a warning label. The room hushed the second I placed it on the table. The final compliance binder, once encrypted behind more firewalls than the NSA, now physically manifested in crisp 24-pound ivory paper, every page vetted, time-stamped, initialed. Lead auditor Watts leaned forward, flipped to the signature sheet, scanned, cross-checked. Then, without a word, he clicked his pen, signed his name, and slid the folder toward Rixton Tech's general counsel. They signed too, that was it. No trumpets, no standing ovation. Just paper, ink, silence louder than any applause. Marshall, seated beside me, exhaled like he'd been holding his breath since 1997. He turned to the chair on his right, the one that had belonged to Ryan, empty. He stared at it for a second, expression unreadable, then muttered flatly, "We'll handle HR later." Nobody responded, because nobody needed to. The air in the room shifted again, just slightly, like the pressure had equalized. We weren't scrambling anymore, weren't clawing back from the brink. The brink had passed, and I was still standing. I stood, smoothed the front of my blazer, and gathered my bag. The binder stayed behind, its job was done. As I turned to leave, my phone buzzed. I glanced down. Subject, Post-Merger Strategy Committee invite from Marshall Wilkins' body. We'd like your input moving forward. You have time tomorrow? I didn't respond right away. Just kept walking. Past the war room. Past reception. Past the security desk where Ryan had once barked instructions into a headset like he was running a spaceship. And when the doors opened and I stepped into the sunlight outside, I smiled. Finally. Just admin, huh? Thanks for joining the fun, you office survivors. Subscribe for more switch-flicking drama. Let's make your former coworkers sweat.